All right, let's get right into it. We're about to walk through a story from the Bible that feels more like a high-stakes political thriller, one with a finale that is just absolutely shocking. We're talking about the Great Rebellion in Numbers chapter 16.
So this is the question that hangs over this entire story, isn't it? It really makes you wonder, where's that line between speaking up for what's right and a full-blown rebellion that just threatens to burn everything to the ground?
Okay, so our story kicks off in the middle of the desert. The entire nation of Israel is camped out. But underneath the surface, something is seriously wrong. Discontent is simmering and it is about to boil over in a big way.
Let's start with verse 1. I want you to picture a tent, late at night. There's just one oil lamp flickering, casting these long shadows, and huddled together are four very powerful men. You've got Korah, a Levite, he's actually Moses' cousin. Then there's Dathan, Abiram, and On, all leaders from the tribe of Reuben. Their whispers are sharp, just filled with ambition and resentment. This is it. This is the moment the conspiracy is born.
Now let's jump to verse 2. The very next morning, this secret little plot goes public in a huge way. Korah and his crew make their move, but they haven't come alone. Imagine this, 250 other leaders, we're talking the big names, the men of renown. They all stand up, together, right behind Korah. It's this sea of influential faces, all staring down Moses. The sheer scale of this challenge, it's just incredible.
And in verse 3, we hear their accusation. Korah's voice just rings out across the camp. And he's clever about it. He doesn't just demand power, he wraps his accusation in this language of holiness. He says, hey, we're all holy. The whole congregation. So what gives you and Aaron the right to put yourselves above everyone else? It's a brilliant but incredibly dangerous political move.
Moses' reaction in verse 4 is, well, it's just stunning. He doesn't argue, he doesn't shout back, he just falls on his face. Can you picture that? The man who talks to God, the leader of the nation, so completely crushed by this betrayal from his own people, his own family, that he just collapses into the dust.
But he doesn't stay down for long. In verse 5, imagine him pushing himself up, dust on his face, and he looks right at Korah. He says, all right, tomorrow morning God will show us who belongs to him. He's calling their bluff. Verses 6 and 7 lay out the rules of the test. Get your censers, these little fire pans for incense, and we'll let God choose. Then, in verses 8 through 10, he really hones in on Korah. You can just hear the sadness in his voice when he asks, is it such a small thing to you that God has set you Levites apart to serve him? Do you need the priesthood too? And then comes the knockout punch, in verse 11. Moses totally reframes the fight. He tells them this has nothing to do with him. You aren't rebelling against us, you're rebelling against the Lord.
So, the line has been drawn in the sand. A challenge has been made. And now this whole confrontation is about to escalate into a direct test of God's authority, a trial by holy fire.
So verse 12, Moses summons Dathan and Abiram, but they flat out refuse. Their response is just pure defiance. We will not come up. And then in verses 13 and 14, they twist the knife. They accuse Moses of dragging them out of a land flowing with milk and honey. Get this, they're talking about Egypt where they were slaves, just to kill them in the desert. They're painting their own liberator as a failed dictator.
And that accusation, that's what pushes Moses to his breaking point. Verse 15 shows us this rare flash of his anger. Just picture his face, flushed with righteous fury, as he looks up to heaven and talks straight to God. He says, do not accept their offering. I haven't taken a single thing from them, not even a donkey. He's defending his own honor.
Okay, so in verses 16 and 17, the plan for the test is all set. Then, verse 18 gives us the scene. Just visualize it. 252 men. Korah, his 250 leaders, and Aaron all standing at the entrance to the sacred tabernacle. Every single one of them is holding a bronze censer, and the air is just thick with smoke and incense and tension. Then in verse 19, Korah gathers the entire community to watch this showdown. And right then, this brilliant, terrifying light, the glory of the Lord, appears for everyone to see.
And this is where things get really intense. In verses 20 and 21, a voice comes out of that divine light and says, separate yourselves from this community so I can destroy them in an instant. God is ready to just wipe everybody out. But look at verse 22. Moses and Aaron, they fall on their faces again and they plead, oh God, will you be angry with the entire community when only one man sins? They're standing in the gap, literally shielding the very people who just tried to overthrow them.
Their plea works, but only for the crowd.
For the ringleaders of this rebellion, the time for talking is over. The judgment is here. The climax of our story has finally arrived.
So, in verses 23 to 26, a new command goes out. Get away from the tents of these wicked men. Verse 27 paints this incredible picture. You see the whole community just scrambling backwards, creating this huge empty circle of fear around the rebels' tents. And right in the middle of it all, Dathan and Abiram stand there, defiant, at the entrance of their tents with their wives and kids just staring Moses down.
And into that dead silence, Moses speaks. Verses 28 and 29, he lays out the stakes. If these men die a normal death, then the Lord did not send me. But then, verse 30, Moses raises his voice and prophesies something brand new, something utterly terrifying. If the ground opens its mouth and swallows them alive, then you will all know that they have rejected the Lord.
Verse 31. The instant Moses stops talking, it happens. Imagine the sound of thick canvas being ripped apart, but it's the ground itself splitting open. Verses 32 and 33 are just pure horror. The earth opens like a giant mouth, and the men, their families, their tents, every single thing they own just goes down, alive, into the pit, and then the ground slams shut. Verse 34 says, the rest of Israel just fled, screaming, the earth is going to swallow us too.
And that wasn't even all of it. At the exact same moment, verse 35 tells us that a fire shot out from the Lord and instantly consumed the 250 men who were holding those incense censers at the tabernacle. Two terrifying judgments happening at the same time. The rebellion is over.
Now you would think, right? You would think that after seeing the earth swallow people whole and fire from the sky incinerate 250 of your leaders, that the issue would be settled for good. You'd be wrong, because what happens next shows the conflict is far from over.
This next part is it's unbelievable. Verse 41, the very next day, the people start complaining again, and they blame Moses and Aaron. They say, you have killed the Lord's people. They just saw a divine act of judgment, and they blame the messengers. Well, in verses 42 to 45, the response is immediate. The glory of the Lord shows up again with that same terrifying command, get away from them, so I can consume them in a moment.
So once again, Moses and Aaron hit the dirt. But this time, just pleading isn't going to be enough. God's wrath is already loose, and it's going to take a desperate, courageous act to stop it.
In verse 46, Moses scrambles to his feet and just yells at Aaron. There is no time. You can just hear the absolute urgency in his voice. Get a censer. Go quickly. Make atonement. Wrath has gone out from the Lord. The plague has already begun.
And this is the final powerful image of this whole chapter. Verse 47, Aaron, this old man, takes off running right into the middle of the crowd where people are already dying. And then, verse 48, he stands there, holding that smoking censer high. On one side of him, there are bodies on the ground. On the other side, there are people, terrified but alive. He is literally standing between the dead and the living. And at his feet, the plague stopped.
Verse 49 gives us the final, terrible cost of that one last rebellion. 14,700 people died in that plague. And that's on top of all the people who died with Korah. It's just a staggering number. In verse 50, Aaron finally returns to Moses. The plague is over. And so this incredibly intense, violent story comes to an end, leaving us right back where we started. The events of Numbers 16 are this stark, unforgettable reminder about the difference between righteous dissent and rebellion that destroys everything. And it makes us ask ourselves, when does challenging authority cross that line? That's definitely something worth thinking about.